Hello. Okay, good morning, everyone. Morning, wow. We're starting off right, as I always say in every webinar. This is getting close to my bedtime, so I apologize for any mistakes, including by saying good morning. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsay Glasner. I am the K-12 Outreach Coordinator here at the Lab of Ornithology. Oh, that's right. I told Kelly I would start my video for this. Hi, now you guys can see my face. This is who you're talking to. I'm here with Kelly Schaefer sitting next to me. We are in the Lab of Ornithology right now. We're really excited that we're having a large group of educators coming with us. Oh, thank you, Kelly. I'm trying to get it out of the way. There? Okay. We have a large number of educators joining us tonight, and I know that many of you are very excited to receive a free window bird feeder pictured here in the bottom left. For those of you who are having trouble reaching the chat window, we'll talk about that in just a second. But before we begin, I'm going to turn my video off to stop distracting myself. I just want to highlight a fun video and also test video sound. Kelly, can you test that? Okay. Hopefully this is what we want to try and acquire and reach for all of the youth we work with.
We saw a blue heron. Yeah, that one was like the best one. Yeah, that was really big. I saw a lily pad with white flowers. That was like really cool because that's if you like adjusted it right, you could see everything like really vividly and like sharply. When you're not looking with binoculars, you can see a tree, but if you look with the binoculars, you can see the leaves closer, and it makes it look bigger. And I think everybody has binoculars. Oh, yeah. Here's the way. It's sitting down. Oh, wow. That is so cool. I thought there was a turtle, and it had a lot of rocks on its back, but it was actually a muskrat carrying sticks and food for its home. The binoculars help you like kind of see where it is and like what it's doing, but the scope kind of has that really locks on it. I can see the details of where the feathers lined up. I definitely will work that. Yes, I would definitely take that. So if I spotted a bird, I can see it closer up. Cool, like that morning bird right there.
So we made this video in partnership with our sponsor, Celestron Optics, to just show the amazing excitement that kids have when seeing binoculars. But much of this excitement doesn't just come from having tools like binoculars. It's the same exact excitement that kids share and experience when they're first seeing birds up close. And oftentimes the best opportunity for kids to see birds up close for the first time is through feeding birds. And that's what this whole purpose of this webinar is, to discuss how you can start incorporating feeding birds and enhance your programs, if you already have programs around feeding birds, to help get kids connected to their local environment and get that spark and excitement that you just saw. So the platform we'll be using is Zoom. Many of you are already on it right now, so I hope you haven't had any technical issues so far. If you do, the email I sent earlier with the help desk link, just contact them. At the top, if you want to, we're going to be using the chat a bit. I recommend going to the options section, exit full screen, and then when you open up the chat window, here it's shown in the top left, it can also be on the bottom right. The chat window can just pop up on your side here. And I do please ask everyone to send messages to everyone, not just to the panelists, which are Kelly and myself. Oftentimes we experience with these webinars is that you have some really great ideas or recommendations or links that you want to share, and being an education community, we want to share all those ideas. So please share your thoughts and experiences, resources that you used in the chat window by sending it to everyone. Kelly will be here with any technical support and whatnot, but it seems like she's been monitoring that we have quite a lot of people from around the country. Kelly, any highlights?
Sure do. Sorry, I was answering some other questions. Let's see, we've got folks from Michigan and Iowa, from Kansas, from Arizona, New York, Vermont, North Carolina.
So we have
Alaska.
Wow. We have people from all over the country. Potentially, I saw we had some international people register. I'm not sure if they're here or not, but with, what do we have now? Over 100 people currently on this webinar. Thank you guys so much. And it's amazing to see the excitement that you all bring with feeding birds. So without further ado, pardon me. My name is Lindsay Glasner again. I'm with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and our mission here at the lab is to interpret and conserve the Earth's biological diversity through research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. Now, specifically, Kelly and I are with the Birdseed K-12 program here at the lab. So we take all the knowledge and research that's happening here at the lab to create innovative resources and trainings that build science skills while inspiring young people to connect to local habitats, explore biodiversity, and engage in citizen science projects. So how we do that, we provide two different opportunities. One is through curriculum resources that we'll discuss some of those today in our webinar. And the other is by also doing educator training both online, like this webinar, as well as in person. If you live anywhere in Baltimore, Detroit, Los Angeles, or if you just want to join our monthly webinars, we have trainings happening. I do recommend you look at our events page to see what other activities are going to be happening through the Birdseed team. Now, today's program is, in this webinar specifically, and the feeders that you'll all be receiving are particularly sponsored by Pennington Birdseed. Now, to receive the free feeder, I sent most of you an email yesterday with all the details, but you need to attend the entire webinar. Stay till the very end. It should end no later than 7 o'clock. I'll hopefully try and finish early. At that point, Kelly and I will send you a link to a survey that will ask you the shipping address you have. You do need to complete the survey tonight to receive your bird feeder, and we'll start shipping within the next, you should receive the feeder within the next 3 to 4 weeks. You don't have to be a classroom teacher or anything like past webinars. Anybody is welcome to receive the feeder. You just have to go through the entire webinar. So, starting from the basics, both within the Cornell Lab's mission as well as Birdsleuth's mission, we have the word citizen science. And I want to make sure that we are all on the same starting grounds with this concept of citizen science. So in the chat window, I open it up to you guys to offer any keywords, ideas, definitions of what you think of when you hear citizen science. Science for everyone, collecting data, real science. Absolutely. Stewardship, I like that, Brooke. Citizen science is something that can be performed by anyone, anywhere. Absolutely, Laurel. Community involvement. Citizens who can monitor things from every location. Collecting data that cannot be tamed any other way. No boundaries, public participation. Excellent. That's exactly right. You guys are hitting it right on the head. Scientific literacy. Oh, wonderful. Real science for a purpose. And that's what we really like to think about with citizen science. It's people everywhere who are reporting observations of natural events using basic scientific protocols. when I show this image to educators without giving them any kind of context, the first thing that comes to their mind is thinking of light pollution. But in fact, every single one of these dots is a checklist submitted to eBird, our largest citizen science project here at the Lab of Ornithology. So that's citizen science at every single point. And it's such an expansive citizen science project that you can start seeing the entire world. And that's what's truly marvelous about citizen science, is connecting people from all over the world. And it's forming this partnership where everyday people, citizens of the world, are participating and partnering with scientists to answer real-world questions that we may not be able to answer without you. As one fifth grader described it to us, scientists can't be everywhere, so they need everyday people to help gather that data and answer these questions. And that's really what a lot of the foundation of all of our resources are based on, is this everybody everywhere can contribute to citizen science. Now, we are very biased here at the Lab of Ornithology, and we love birds. But I encourage you, as the resources we talk about today, it can also, the concept of citizen science can be applied to any other type of interest. If you have kids who are interested in jellyfish or amphibians, snakes, caterpillars, you want to do monarchs, anything like that, there are citizen science projects out there for you. So one website that I highly recommend is scistarter.com. I'll have Kelly enter that in the chat window shortly, but you're also welcome to email us anytime with questions. And that's a great resource starting off with finding citizen science projects. Here at the lab, we have 6 citizen science projects currently running. They all vary between time of year, type of data that's being collected, the type of species that's being collected, and where it's being collected. But we'll focus on 3 of these citizen science projects today. And those projects are all focusing on feeding birds, which leads to the question of, well, why do we even want to consider feeding birds? Many of you are talking about how you are currently feeding birds either at home or at school. So what brought you to this webinar that you want to consider feeding birds? Deb, you want to involve your students in Project Feeder Watch? That's great. We'll actually talk about that today. So again, this topic of why feed birds: attract birds to your school garden, develop observational skills and language. You want to attract them to observe them, to see birds up close. How to do it safely too, absolutely. Giving kids in a city the opportunity to observe wildlife. Shannon, I 100% agree. Creating direct connections between visitors to birds. And Louise, that's exactly right. Students love to learn and observe birds, especially when they're right there at the feeder eating. So that's, yes, absolutely. Real quick, because we have such a large group, we don't tend to normally have so many people. If you have any kind of logistical questions, there is a Q&A box as well. I know some people are asking if this will be recorded, if chat will be recorded. Any of those logistical questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A. That will probably help Kelly manage a little more. So we think about this idea of why feeding birds, and you guys came up with a great list there. First off, that I didn't see anybody write this, but food is a necessary habitat component. When teaching habitat in a school setting, you always cover the 4 main aspects: water, cover, space, and food. And especially for people like us here in upstate New York, which have scenes that look very similar to this with the snow, it's very difficult sometimes for birds to find access to regular food sources. Many birds have adapted to seed caching, but it's still an opportunity to provide a necessary food habitat or food opportunity. Plus, the feeder brings the birds to you, and that's going to help with those observational skills, that excitement for kids to see wildlife potentially for the first time. Now, when we think of citizen science and feeding birds, there's a wonderful blend of how these two can be great for educators. They're exciting and real world. Again, they're an opportunity to study wild animals. It can be low cost, and you can feed birds year round. It's not only helping the birds, but it's also sparking that kid's curiosity. And especially what I think is the most important is it's connecting kids to their local environment and instilling that stewardship mindset. Now, the resource that's specifically around the bird feeder we provide is called Feathered Friends. And I'll go over the details of Feathered Friends at the end of this webinar, but it's a wonderful opportunity, especially for the elementary and middle school age group, of starting those observations around birds. Now, oftentimes we work with educators, they're like, you know what, this is great, I'm super excited, but there are just no birds in my school, or there are no birds in my area. How do we even begin? And I want to warn you, if you're one of these people, that you are suffering from bird blindness. It's okay though, because bird blindness is easily cured. And the first step is just by observing your first few birds that are coming to your feeder. Because once you start noticing birds at your feeder, you and your students will not stop noticing birds anywhere. Now let's talk about some logistics of feeding birds. I know some people have made some comments about how to safely feed birds. Logistic-wise, you want to first think about, well, what type of feeders do you want to provide? There are such an array of bird feeders available that it's intimidating to know where to start. And the first step is knowing that different bird feeders attract different birds. For example, excuse me, we have a suet bird feeder right here. And these suet bird feeders will tend to attract your nuthatches, your woodpeckers. You're going to get a lot of insectivorous birds here. Compared to, say, a tube feeder, which is going to have predominantly seeds, you're going to get your finches. And it's not coming to my head at all. It's late at night. Finches and titmice, sparrows. Sorry, we're late night webinar. But compared to a platform bird feeder, a small hopper feeder, you're going to get a greater diversity of birds. Open flat space, it's almost mimicking a ground area, in which case you could get larger birds such as jays, but you can also get a greater diversity. The thing you want to consider as well with bird feeding is many seeds may actually fall on the ground, where you're going to get your cardinals, your doves, your jays, including sometimes your chipmunks or your squirrels. And then, of course, far more specialized bird feeders like the Hummingbird Feeder here. And that's really what you want to consider. When you're selecting a bird feeder, your bird feeder will dictate what types of birds you're likely going to see. You're not going to have a blue jay come visiting your hummingbird feeder, just like you're not going to have your hummingbird feeder visiting your tube feeder. So when first planning or starting your process of feeding birds, it's a wonderful opportunity to turn it to the youth that you work with and figure out, well, do we want to attract a specific kind of bird? Many times we work with schools that want to attract their state bird. And so they'll do some research on the state bird, and they have to figure out, well, what type of food do they eat? And that goes back to the question as well of, well, feeders will dictate what types of birds you'll get, but food will also influence the birds that you attract as well. Project Feeder Watch, one of our citizen science projects here at the lab, has compiled the data of the that participants have submitted based off of the type of seed they use and the birds that they've observed, and created this wonderful chart about what birds will be attracted by what food source. So when everybody asks us, well, what seed do you recommend? And if you want to just get the greatest diversity of birds, we recommend the black oil sunflower seed. That's going to get you the chickadees, the nuthatches, the finches, the cardinals and grosbeaks, the sparrows and blackbirds, jays, woodpeckers, and titmice, and even pigeons and doves. It's not selected here, but a newer chart has just been released, and that'll get you even the pigeons and doves. Now, if you want to consider, you just want to look at your state bird, and say your state bird is a Carolina chickadee, then you really want to either put out sunflowers or suet. Putting out a corn or millet's not going to attract those chickadees. So considering the seed type as well as the feeder type is going to give you that balance of what birds are you going to see. And the nice thing about the Project Feeder Watch website is they've created a full online interactive about which bird, which food preference. And so these are common feeder birds that you can do this online interactive with. And what they'll do is you select your wintering region, because again, Project Feeder Watch is solely focusing on feeding birds during the winter time. So this is your winter region for the birds. The food type that you're providing and the feeder type. So I could just select this, you know, I'm considering all of the United States, I'm considering all the food types and all feeder types, and I'll see a whole list of the birds that will come, that we'll see with any kind of feeder food combination type. However, let's be more specific. So we're just considering the food type when comparing these two charts. So on the top, both of them list winter region as all, and both list feeder types as all. But the food has changed. In this top graph, we have milo, and then the bottom graph, we have black oil sunflower seeds. Now you recall I mentioned black oil sunflower seeds, we consider the universal seed. Majority of the birds will eat black oil sunflower seeds. And this is clearly represented when going through this online interactive. We have a greater diversity of birds and greater number of birds that will consume the black oil sunflower seeds compared to milo. And that's a real big kicker here is you can have students use this interactive to compare and contrast. Well, what kind of feeder types do we have available to us, and what kind of food types do we want to get? And let's predict what birds we're likely to see with which combination. Or maybe you already have a tube feeder out, and you currently have safflower seed in your tube feeder. So changing what your winter region is, putting in safflower, and then putting in a tube type for your feeder types, and then see what birds come up in this interactive. And compare, how accurate is this interactive compared to the birds we're seeing? Are they listing other birds that we haven't seen? Or have we seen birds that aren't on this list? The nice thing as well is you can click on every single one of these birds and learn more about them. What other kinds of foods do they eat? What other feeders may they visit? And so this is another online interactive that provides that inquiry opportunity for kids to compare and contrast, or potentially form a hypothesis and predict what birds they're likely going to see. And that's what we're all about here with the citizen science, is formulating that authentic scientific inquiry process. Now, you all will be receiving a bird feeder, but another really great activity, especially for those of you with younger students or who work at nature centers, is creating your own bird feeder. And we do have a blog all around DIY bird feeders. Potentially I might have Kelly share that link. We'll definitely share it at the end of this webinar. But it's a great opportunity where you can make your own suet feeders and your suet cakes using cookie cutter shapes. Here on the right, we have a simple pine cone bird feeder. If peanut butter doesn't work for you, you can try shortening like Crisco or something like that. Personally, my favorite are recycled bird feeders. We have a classic soda bottle bird feeder here, but we've had students do milk jugs or milk gallons. We've had students do yogurt containers and then bring in the arts and paint the outside of the yogurt containers. Any type of those options where you can make your own bird feeder. And that's bringing in the arts aspect, but it's also bringing in the STEM aspect. Maybe instead of following a set procedure on how to make a bird feeder, instead just provide an array of materials and challenge the students either in groups or individually to use whatever resources are available for them to create their own design for a bird feeder. And that could bring in a lot of the design and STEM challenges and engineering practices while also still benefiting your local feathered friends. Then of course you guys will all be receiving the window bird feeder. So that's just what it's looking like, and a quick shout out to Thank You or Pennington, who are our sponsors. Now, with the window bird feeder, we often have educators ask us, well, this is great, but aren't birds actually going to strike the window because the bird feeder is on the window? And we actually had a group of students a year ago who did a whole investigation on bird strikes in their schoolyard. And I thought this was just a wonderful video, a great inquiry project, and I want to share it with you in the hopes that it may inspire you guys to start your own inquiry projects with your students. So I quickly transition over here. Okay, and make sure that you guys can see what I see. Hello?
We have a huge property with big wood. Our school has many windows. Since we have so many windows, we get a lot of bird strikes. It's our responsibility to keep the birds safe around our windows.
Besides that, we went to different parts of the school that are close to the forest to search the ground around the windows to see if any birds had struck the windows. We found a little over a month, over 14 strikes. When we took the pictures, we would write down the date, the number of bird strikes off that day, and how many pictures we took.
We created a device that is going to help birds stay away from windows because they keep crashing into them. In order to get permission to do this, we need to talk to our principal, Mr. Bain, and the head coach, Mr. Anning. We're going to make a layout/blueprint to present to them that has pictures and windows of the where the bird strikes are most common. We are making this so we can show them the specific areas that the strikes are occurring and for a short-term solution, and then eventually a long-term solution. Our ideas to help the birds from crashing into windows is that we will be moving feeders closer to windows so the birds don't have enough momentum to crash. Also, we need to watch for berry trees that have fermented berries, because lots of birds get drunk by eating fermented berries. We know that because one of our windows has fermented berries near it, and it has the most strikes that we have recorded.
Okay. Are you guys back on the PowerPoint now? Okay, so as the students were saying, and they basically took away my thunder with the excitement of the study, but the Clem et al. Study is just showing that the feeder placement does impact bird strikes. But contrary to what we would think, the closer to the window is actually a safer zone. So what this strike team was proposing and the research that they found is that birds, when they are striking a window, it's the momentum they gain from leaving a bird feeder, not coming to a bird feeder. So if the bird feeder is closest to the window, they can't gain enough momentum to harm themselves by hitting the window. Compare that to our deadliest collision zone, that's between 5 meters to 10 meters away from that window. That's where you want to avoid putting your bird feeder. If you're going to do that, put it further away than the 10-meter zone, or bring it closer. Personally, I like the idea of bringing it closer because that's just easier for your students to see the birds too from your bird feeder. So with the window bird feeder, this is actually one way to help prevent any kind of window strikes. Now, I haven't been seeing this chat window too much, but I am sure at some point somebody has made a comment on squirrels and how squirrels have just eaten all their seed and destroyed their feeders. I mean, this guy lounging here, chowing down on the seed. If you have any kind of bird feeders, you've seen this scene 1,000 times. Now, there are some strategies that we can utilize to help deter squirrels. One of them is consider using a baffle or a squirrel-proof feeder. Some of these are the baffles that you see here. They can be cones around the pole. They can be weight-sensitive bird feeders. So if a certain weight, it exceeds a certain weight touching onto the base of the bird feeder, the feeder will actually close up. And only birds which weigh significantly less can actually eat the seed. A really, really big recommendation, the one thing that does actually work, is keep feeders about 10 feet away from any kind of jumping platform. Now, that may seem contradictory to the window bird feeder. All the window bird feeders I've ever placed up, the ones I work with people, somehow, for the most part, squirrels don't go for window bird feeders. I don't know if it's because it's too close to glass. I'm not entirely sure why. We haven't had too many issues with window bird feeders having squirrels, so try it out and see, or better yet, have students propose an experiment and see if they can find solutions. But of course, for any of you who do have baffles or squirrel-proof feeders, they aren't fully proofed. Squirrels are smart. They're very smart, and they do get around stuff. The newest of solutions I just discovered is actually a slinky. So looking at this slinky here, I'll show you a video.
Slinky 1, squirrel 0. There we go. He's going for it again. There we go. Couldn't even make it up this time. Brilliant. Works. It's back again. Oh, he's trying to get inside. You won't make it though, you can't get out of it. Oh my God. No. He's made it in. Oh no, he's got another new plan. And look, it's always makes better. Come on, he's trained all his friends. Typical.
So I guess this video just goes to show that squirrels are devious creatures. Slinkies are not the solution. My mom saw this video and we are currently testing it. And I can report that 2 days after she did add the slinky to her feeder, the squirrels were back in her feeder. So our recommendation instead is to keep, again, the bird feeders about 10 feet away from any kind of jumping distance platform. But we also have what we call our bird notes. This is an online PDF that you can utilize to give you some tips and tricks on how to deter those pesky squirrels. Ultimately, what I've done, what many teachers have done, is just accept, you know what, the squirrels are great wildlife for the kids to also observe, and it provides some interesting behavioral opportunities. How do birds react when squirrels come to the feeders? Do certain birds brave the squirrels? Maybe you have cardinals and jays that are a little larger that can stand up to the squirrels and could care less compared to smaller birds. Or maybe the squirrels have a preference for food. Maybe if you put a squirrel feeder, quote unquote, to the side, will that deter the squirrels from entering the bird feeder? These are all questions that your students may be asking, and follow up with those. We encourage you to start investigating them and have them test those experiments. You know, can the students come up with other ideas, like a slinky idea, that can deter squirrels? Maybe they can come up with a new squirrel-proof feeder that will make millions of money, because all birders want to know the answer. How do you deter squirrels? And if you have any recommendations, let us know in the chat window too. Another common question we have with educators is, when should we feed birds? Can you feed birds year-round? What kind of impact does that have on them finding natural food sources? And you can feed birds year-round. We do here at the Lab of Ornithology. It doesn't have a significant impact on the birds. The biggest thing, if you do feed birds, is maintaining your bird feeder. You should be washing your bird feeder every couple weeks. If you have a hummingbird feeder, every single time you change the nectar in that hummingbird feeder, you should also be washing that bird feeder. We recommend a solution of 1 part bleach, 9 parts warm water, and make sure you rinse it thoroughly. The window bird feeder you'll be receiving is dishwasher safe, so you can just pop that in the dishwasher. But you're welcome to feed birds year-round. If you're only going to feed birds during a special time, that's fine too. Think of bird feeders as a cafe. You know, they'll come and go to your different cafes. Sometimes they're closed, sometimes they're open. It's okay to not feed birds year-round. So if you do plan on having a bird unit though, and you want bird feeders, but you're not going to feed birds year-round, be sure you set your bird feeder up 1 to 2 weeks in advance and get it established. That way you'll certainly have some birds coming in during your birding units. Now with feeding birds, you know, this is a great bird habitat in the fact that there's a diversity of feeders. It looks like there may be a couple water dishes too. We have tube feeders, we have suet feeders, we have a little platform feeder here, but there are no feeder birds, there are no songbirds. And instead, we have 2 very large birds. we have 2 raptors, birds of prey here. And this may happen at your feeder site as well. When we look at the situation, you know, raptors and the opportunity to see raptors is a marvelous experience. And these birds of prey, Cooper's hawks, American kestrels, sharp-shinned hawks, they will all prey on feeder birds. So you may have all your feeder birds scared away because of these raptors. That could lead to some really, really great discussions in your classroom about the predator-prey interactions and the adaptations that these raptors have to prey on smaller birds. If by chance you're ready and done with the educational aspects of the raptor birds and would like them to move on, simply put down your bird feeders for a little bit and they'll move on. However, looking at this picture, we can start investigating, you know, what can we improve about this feeder habitat? How can we help our feeder birds? When you think of the 4 habitat components, we think of food, water, cover, and space. And it looks like there's plenty of space along this field. They have tons of food. We look like we have a couple water dishes. And cover is really what we're looking at. And there is some cover back here, but it doesn't seem to be enough that may be protecting our smaller feeder birds. And that brings up a really great point when going through inquiry projects with kids. We had a 3rd grade class in New Jersey who they were really excited to start feeding birds. They put out 2 different bird feeders with 2 different types of seeds. You can see this one has black oil sunflower seeds in this tube feeder. They put it next to the window to avoid collisions. But after a couple weeks, you know, the birds weren't visiting. So the 3rd graders decided to have this conversation. Why are no birds visiting our feeders? And they brainstormed a lot of different options. And they had this discourse where, you know, could it be the fact that the birds don't like black oil sunflower seeds? Do we not have the right type of feeder out? Should we be putting a water source out? Is it too close to the window and are kids distracting the birds or scaring the birds away? Ultimately, one student suggests, well, maybe there's just not enough cover. And that habitat component of cover is very important for birds. And we can see that there's just not much down here. So they went through a full inquiry bird unit. And the first step for them was to just get a better background information of what birds are in their area. Every week, they went on bird walks. And they would see what birds are in our area and participate in eBird counts. You know, who are we seeing? When are we seeing them? How many different species? So they get a better sense, you know, this is who we're seeing, so this is who we want to feed. They also did a study along raptors. What are the predators of these birds? What is the actual wingspan of them? And where can they find them? Are they in our area? Are they in different areas? What do they feed on? Once they had a basic sense of what kind of birds were in their area, they went through this habitat improvement project of how can we create a bird-friendly habitat outside our school window. And this is a wonderful part of bringing in the STEAM component. And I can see this, so this was a 3rd grade level, and you can see the art aspect. This is a wonderful opportunity as well for a middle school or high school level. Start bringing in scale components or participate in outdoor or citizen science projects like our Yard Map or Habitat Network, where it's all online digital mapping around habitat. Bring in other aspects of native plants. Maybe you want to consider pollinator plants or monarchs, but have them identify, is there water? Do we have cover like birdhouses or trees? When we think of cover, we can think of canopy levels. Do we have low shrubs, bushes, as well as higher up canopies like trees? Do we have a diversity of native plants that provide natural food sources along with our bird feeders? These are all topics for students to think about, and having them meet standards such as Common Core, ELA, by going through the discussions and the research behind this, but also going through the next generation science standards as well, between developing and creating scientific inquiry projects and habitat improvement projects, and doing the research and what is a habitat and how are animals interacting with their local habitat. Ultimately, these third graders pitched their project to us here at Bird Sleuth, and we have mini grants available for schools that want to participate in habitat improvement projects. They could receive up to $750. So these students here requested $250 to then implement this habitat improvement project. We have their original windowsill back here in this corner, where they then decided, you know, we need to improve our soil outside the windowsill. So they came up with creative ideas on how to develop that the soil and build that up. They also redesigned some old raised beds out here and created this as a native pollinator garden to attract not only pollinators, which are a food source for birds, but to also attract different birds as well, with many canopy levels and that cover component. So this was a full class project that started in the fall and they completed it in the spring. So they finished this last spring, and their first question was, why are there no birds visiting our bird feeders? And they're happy to report that after this entire habitat improvement project, the birds came to the bird feeders. They added the hummingbird feeders, the tube feeders. We have bird bath. They have plants that are going to be blossoming and blooming over time. And that's really what the success story is about, for kids to get engaged in this type of habitat improvement project, where they can then build something themselves and get connected to their local environment. So with these habitat improvement projects, with these inquiry projects, the basic foundation that many of these have is that they are participating in citizen science. And that's the key with citizen science, is that their observations matter. It's such a motivating factor for youth to know that they're not just doing something for the sake of doing it just to get their grade. They're participating in citizen science to answer larger questions, and that's the motivating factor for them. So I'm going to go through some of the citizen science projects that we have here at the lab that are related to feeding birds. And I encourage you to start thinking about, how can you apply these projects in your educational setting? How can you start getting kids involved with citizen science and feeding birds? Now, the first citizen science project I want to mention is the Great Backyard Bird Count, and it's coming up February 17th to the 21st, 2017. This is an old screenshot, forgive me. But the Great Backyard Bird Count is a simple one-off opportunity for you and your kids to watch birds for 15 minutes anywhere, and share that and participate in a global citizen science project where we're trying to capture where birds are in just this one little snapshot. And over time, as the decades progress and we start seeing birds, we can start assessing trends of how bird populations have changed in that one little snapshot over time. So the Great Backyard Bird Count is a wonderful citizen science project to start with. We actually just had a webinar on the Great Backyard Bird Count last month through our free webinar series, and there is an archived version of that available to you if you're interested. Kelly may be posting that in she seems to the Great Backyard Bird Count.
Yes, I can absolutely.
Thank you. The next citizen science project I want to introduce you guys to is Feeder Watch. Now, if I recommend any citizen science project around feeding birds to you, Feeder Watch seems to be the best fit for classroom teachers. And this is the program that is all around birds coming to the bird feeder, but it's also what has the online interactives about which bird goes with which bird feeder and which bird likes which birdseed. And we here at the Feeder Watch team just wanted to let us know, for you guys to know, that classroom teachers, if you sign up in the month of February to participate in Feeder Watch, this project will go through April. But if you sign up now, you not only get to finish this season, but you could also get next season free. So Project Feeder Watch is the only citizen science project that does have a fee. It's $15 for lab members or $18 for non-lab members. But part of that is you get a full common feeder bird ID poster either for eastern or western species. You also get the full handbook on how to participate in feeder watch. This is a little more intense, so to say, in that it has a protocol that's not just submit birds you see anytime, anywhere. Instead, you want to submit bird observations 2 consecutive days, and it could be every week, it could be every other week, every month, but it does have to be 2 consecutive days, and the handbook and instructions go through that, as well as the educational resources associated with feeder watch. But that structure of 2 consecutive days, that structure is what teachers love. It helps provide them an opportunity where they are regularly going to have their students engaged with birds. So I highly recommend feeder watch, and the nice thing about it then is, again, the data is being used in real scientific applications. So a few years back, feeder watch data was utilized to assess the evening grosbeak population, pictured here on the left. And these beautiful birds, what they were noticing from 1990 to 2010 is there is actually a decline in the North Atlantic population of feeder birds seen at feeders itself. The number of feeders, the number of evening grosbeaks visiting the feeders declined. Thank you, Kelly. And ultimately, they were able to publish a paper that the winter survey data reveals a range-wide decline in evening grosbeak populations. And this is where students who participated in Project Feeder Watch, everybody who participated in Project Feeder Watch, this data and this understanding of population trends wouldn't be possible without that help, without these citizens of the world contributing their data. And that's what's significant about citizen science. The final citizen science project I want to mention to you is eBird. Now, Project Feeder Watch is 2 consecutive days. You have to submit observations 2 consecutive days. Doesn't matter how often, but it has to be 2 consecutive days. Great Backyard Bird Count is only 4 days of the year. eBird is our largest citizen science project. And eBird is a project where you can submit any bird, anywhere, at any point in time. So I highly recommend eBird both for your personal hobbies as well as to start encouraging kids to birding on their own as well. Now, when we look at eBird a few years back, we were reaching our 100th millionth observation, and everyone around the lab was discussing who's it going to be, which hotshot birder here at the lab is going to be the one to submit the 100th million checklist, because we have colleagues who submit a checklist on the way to work, submit a checklist during work, submit a checklist on the way home from work. But it turned out to be this 12-year-old boy, Leron, from British Columbia, who submitted the observation of the American robin. And for all of us here in the education team, we were just ecstatic, because this just reinforces that it's not hotshot birders who participate in citizen science. It's everyday people. And those everyday common birds, we need to keep track of those populations, because we want to make sure we're keeping common birds common while also better understanding bird populations on the decline as well. So every observation matters when it comes to citizen science. The best thing about eBird too is you can query the database. So you can develop different online charts and graphs, especially for the upper age groups in middle school and high school. This is a great assessment tool where you can start having kids analyze their own data and interpret data trends. So we created this graph here of, do eBirders in Missouri see ruby-throated hummingbirds, and how often do eBirders in Missouri see ruby-throated hummingbirds and northern cardinals? And we're looking at this graph and we can start to create some kind of trends. We can see simple assessments. We have frequency here on the, we have frequency here on the y-axis, and we have the date, a year's calendar, so from January 1st to December 31st here on the x-axis. And so we can see that the northern cardinal, about 50% of eBirders are reporting a northern cardinal on their checklist year-round, compared to a ruby-throated hummingbird. ruby-throated hummingbirds are only being reported from mid-April to mid-October here, actually early October. But both species are exhibiting a dip in observations around this mid-June time period. And so this is where we can start asking kids, well, what could be causing this trend? What's happening in bird populations in mid-June? Is this a graph that only shows 1 year's data? So could there have been a storm happening? Was there a drought potentially? Is there a loss in resources? Or is this data over multiple years? Now, this graph specifically was done over 10 years of information, and we're consistently seeing a drop in 10 years of observations right around this area. And that leads us to believe that it's clearly something that the birds are doing in their biology. Now, what's happening in mid-June? The birds are nesting, and when they're nesting, they're quiet. They don't want to be seen or heard because they don't want to draw predators to their nest. And if they don't want to be seen or heard by predators, it's also harder for us as birders to see and hear them, which is what's leading to a drop in the observations. So again, we can look at these citizen science data points and start to interpret and analyze data based off of our background knowledge of birds. And this is hitting up all the next generation science standards that we need to. Now, I see I have about 10 minutes left in our webinar, and I'm just finishing up here, so I want to review quickly the Feathered Friends resources and other resources that are available to you guys. When you receive your free bird feeder, I really encourage you to try and get youth to start observing birds and start asking basic questions. Now, the basis of the Feathered Friends resources was designed for the elementary middle school age group, and it's based on 9 months of activities. So each month is a different topic around birds, whether it's diversity, habitat, flight and migration, conservation, citizen science. There's a variety of themes there. And so you're welcome to follow the lessons as they go through the themes. The themes are based off of what's happening through bird biology, but you can also pick and choose or combine. Again, these are activities, so it's not an intensive curriculum, but it's instead designed to provide year-round engagement. So as birds are coming to the bird feeders, you use that as a teaching opportunity. There's both indoor activities and outdoor activities, take-home options, cool facts, as well as recommended book readings to bring in the literacy components. But every single month, they're introducing you to new feeder birds and help build those bird identification opportunities. Now, I'm coming to the end of my webinar here. I highly encourage you, especially if you're elementary or middle school educator, to download Feathered Friends. But for all of you K through 12, and those of you who've stayed through the entire webinar, you'll notice a theme that we've had. We really want to encourage student inquiry and take those questions they're asking and ask them back. You know, that's a great question, Susan. How can we find the answer to those questions? How can we develop an experiment to test that? Let's figure out the answer together. And this is what we really encourage in our free curriculum, Investigating Evidence. And this is truly a full curriculum all around student inquiry on how to encourage inquiry, how to develop, to answer open versus closed-ended questions, formulating hypotheses, creating and designing experiments, analyzing the information, and then promoting the research that the students have. This full curriculum is NGSS and Common Core aligned, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that if you do any kind of inquiry opportunity or inquiry in your classroom, that you utilize this Investigating Evidence curriculum, because this is the foundation. It's not bird specific. It's simply inquiry specific. And that's the key behind this, is you want to use citizen science as a tool to inspire any form of inquiry and investigation. I'll leave you with a wonderful, wonderful inquiry story that we have. And it's by Amy, who's a 4th grader, asking, will a fake cat scare away birds? Now, she would notice that whenever her neighbor's cat would come to her bird feeder, it would scare away all the birds. And she wanted to test that, but of course she couldn't tether her neighbor's cat to the tree, so she decided to test, will a fake cat scare away birds? And so she did a result. She hung up 2 bird feeders. 1 week, she put out the bird feeder, measured the cups of seed eaten without the cat. And the fake cat, without the fake cat present, 3.5 cups of birdseed was eaten. But the next week, when she hung up the bird feeder and also included the fake cat, only 1/2 cup of birdseed was eaten. And so Amy came up with this wonderful result of, the cat is a good guard. And she wrote all about it. She actually submitted her investigation to our student publication magazine, Birdseed Investigator. And she didn't stop there. This is the best part. She said, the cat is a good guard, but I thought the birds would learn the cat was fake. And this is the true test of inquiry and the scientific literacy. Amy didn't stop with just saying, this is what I found and that's that. She went further and said she thought the birds would learn the cat was fake and predicted that over a period of time, if she left the fake cat out, the cups of seed eaten would increase because the birds would learn the cat was fake. And that's exactly what we're trying to hit at with our curriculum investigating evidence. Now, both this experiment as well as the experiment here on our page, the effect of snow depth on bird counts, practicing measuring skills and opportunities, or the measuring of the cups of seed. You don't actually have to be able to identify the birds to enjoy feeding birds and to participate in inquiry projects around birds. There are many creative ways to do this without actually having to identify bird species. However, if you have older students, I encourage you to have them identify the bird species. So ultimately, we don't necessarily need to put the names to the birds, but we do want to have you and your students be able to start observing birds more, become connected to that local environment, and start naturally asking questions, because that's how we create scientifically literate children of our future. We want to get them engaged with their local environment. So with that, Kelly has been feverishly answering questions in the chat window, but I will be joining her right now and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have. Before we do this though, I do want to just put in the survey real quick into the chat window. So we'll share this survey link a couple times. You guys are all welcome to receive a free bird feeder. Thank you again for attending this webinar. The survey itself, I think, has a total of 4 questions, one of them being your shipping address, the other one's just really basic questions. It should take you no more than 2 minutes to complete the survey. You must complete the entire survey to receive a bird feeder, and you must have that survey filled out by, I think it's 7 a.m. I listed it tomorrow morning, because at 7 a.m. when I get into the office tomorrow morning, I'm printing off the sheet of addresses and we're getting things to start to ship out. You can expect your bird feeder within 3 to 4 weeks. To pack all these boxes takes a bit of time since it's a small team of us, so please bear in mind, but you should be receiving your bird feeder within 3 to 4 weeks. Okay.
So we had a question about finding birdseed, where to get your birdseed. There are a ton of places that have it. Grocery stores carry seed. A lot of hardware stores carry seed. And if you are crafty and you know some of the folks, or you're willing to go talk to folks who run some of these stores, you can sometimes get discounted bags of seed. So if you go to like a Lowe's or something and you talk to them and be like, hey, what do you do with your damaged bag of seed? I work for a school. Is there any way we can work something out? Sometimes stores will do that.
Yes, so damaged bags of seed, like specifically torn bags of seed, they can't sell that. So hopefully they'd be able to sell it to you for a discount or donate it. That's a great option, Kelly. I just saw this comment, do you need a login for SurveyMonkey?
So,
no, you do not.
I copied the wrong link for you at first. So the big long one with like 50 letters after it, don't click on that one. That'll ask you to log in. The second link I sent out, which I'm going to send again right now in the chat window, is the one that you're going to want to use.
Okay, let me join in this chat window. Real quick, feel free, any questions that we have missed during this webinar, Kelly and I will stay here for a bit and ask her questions. If you have any future questions, feel free to email us, birdsleuth@cornell.edu. You're also welcome to follow us on Twitter and Facebook and check out any of our resources on our website. We do also have a free webinar series that tend to be a little more interactive, I think, than this webinar. Our next one coming up is all around student inquiry, actually, which is next week. We have a webinar on gardening for birds. We have a webinar on bird communication, and then observing bird movements. That's the rest. We also have archive webinars. So, chat window. So the links provided, this webinar is being recorded. The links provided in this chat room, we will upload the recorded video to YouTube, and all those links will be listed in that YouTube document. Give us some time with the YouTube document. If you check on our YouTube channel around tomorrow afternoon, everything should be up and set. You are not able to use a PO box for the address. You have to use a physical address. We made that very clear in the survey. So when you see that, Larry, I think it's written there like maybe 2 or 3 times. No PO boxes, please. You can access any of our YouTube videos.
If you just go to youtube.com and search Bird Sleuth, one word, we'll come up and just click on the channel there, and all of our recorded webinars are available there.
Megan, the Birdseed Ambassador Program, that's a program I coordinate here at the lab. Essentially, we only have a team of 4. We can't be everywhere. So we depend on educators who regularly provide professional development or who are interested in providing professional development to other educators to help share our resources. Essentially what we're looking at is, if you are interested in the professional development workshop, you would work with me to coordinate a time that you want to host a workshop if you already have an existing audience, and then I would send you free resources like these bird feeders if you want, as well as other curriculum opportunities where you yourself would then host a workshop around a topic of your interest related to our resources and distribute those resources to those educators. Do you do bird count with a group? Wait, how do you do bird count with a group? Did they see 3 birds or 3 people see the same bird? That's a great question, Elizabeth. We actually addressed this in our GBBC webinar, so if you get confused, I recommend you re-watch that if you'd like. But essentially what we talk about is birding in groups. We recommend having students bird together in groups of 2 or 3, where each student is responsible for different tasks. One may be in charge of binoculars, another in charge of the checklist, another in charge of finding the birds, or etc. And then the strategy used is they themselves as individual groups will come up with a checklist. So you may have 5 or 6 different checklists between your entire class. From there, you then bring the entire group together and say, okay, let's talk about bird species. Who saw a northern cardinal? Okay, group A saw 5 northern cardinals. Group B saw 7 northern cardinals. Group C saw 5. What's our best estimate for birds? You think we saw 5 or 6? Okay, we all agree on we saw 6 individual cardinals. Okay, let's put 6 on our tally and then go from there. This is not only developing those communicational skills, but for you to also have them understand that not every bird they see may be counted, because you may have students say, you know, oh, I saw a flamingo. You know, flamingos aren't found in our area, Jimmy. We're in New York State. We don't have flamingos. Did anybody else happen to see the flamingo? No? Okay, well, we're not going to count it. We need to have at least 3 people say they've seen the flamingo, something like that. I hope that helps, Elizabeth. For those of you interested in the gardening resources, we do have a Gardening for Birds webinar, a free webinar happening. You go to our website under the educational or events and workshops, we have a whole free webinar tab. Yes, you can get a certificate for attending. Thank you for asking, Marilyn. Send us an email, birdseed@cornell.edu, and we can send you a certificate of completion for attending this webinar. We can't provide formal credits, but it will be a certificate of completion. Physical activities and going outside is really great for them. Oh, never mind. Sorry. Can you share the link for the Gardening Birds webinar? Yes, I will pull that up. You know what? Let me just do a quick link share. Give me one moment here, everybody. I think I'm sharing my page. So if you go to our website, it's birdsleuth.org. And this is our website here. Under workshops and webinars, our events calendar, if you want to, that will list any of the workshops we are having, any events we have, but there's a free webinars tab right here. And this will list all the free webinars we are doing and have done. So you'll see a Gardening for Birds webinar right here. You'll also see all of our past archive webinars on language arts, inquiry, dissecting owl pellets, evolution, and the Great Backyard Bird Count. So again, birdsleuth.org under workshops and webinars, here's the free webinars tab, and I'll share the free webinars URL in the Zoom discussion. You know, Alvana, we actually have a blog on starting a bird club that we can share with you. Let me pull that up real quick and show you. So starting on a bird club, let me find that real quick. There, starting a bird club. We talked with, I think, 4 educators who have successfully started bird clubs and gotten their advice. So this is the recommended advice we have. If you want to get contact hours for this, you need to email us, birdsleuth@cornell.edu, to receive a completion letter for 1 contact hour. Heidi, administrators will be concerned about attracting mice and rats. Yes, that is often a concern. One thing we do recommend is having a bird feeder that may have something underneath to catch the excess seed, regularly raking the seed hulls potentially, or putting the bird feeders in your garden. Having the bird feeders in your garden, above your garden, or above a compost pile if you have compost, that's another means that people utilize to reduce the seed impact for rats and mice. Do you have any other suggestions, Kelly?
No, raking is the really if depending on how the feeder is displayed, if you can get something underneath it to catch it, to keep it from going on the ground, that's going to help a lot with the spillage.
So for those of you who want the certificate of completion, again, you have to email us, birdsleuth@cornell.edu. That's listed on the page right now at the very bottom. Hopefully you can get that, Larry. Oh, no worries, not at all. Depending on where you are, Karen, there actually are certain locations when it's bear season, you don't hang up bird feeders. That's honestly the best recommendation we have. Yeah, you don't want to attract bears to your area. So during bear season, I don't recommend hanging up bird feeders. Thank you very much, everyone. Kelly and I will still hang around to answer more questions you may have. Again, you need to complete the survey for the free feeder by 7 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning. So please just do it right away. Mary, can you explain where to find investigating evidence again? Certainly. Kelly is sharing the link to you right now in the chat window. I do, yeah, Karen, I prefer birds over bears. Actually, bears are quite fascinating to me too. But you might also want to check your town, because oftentimes towns with bear issues will have laws around feeding birds. So you may want to check into that. So yeah, Kelly, that's a difficult question. As we talked about in the webinar with our squirrel section, safflower seed I've heard is bitter technically to squirrels, but
they will eventually develop a taste for it, but it does reduce the amount that they eat.
Yeah.
Also, if you can hang your feeder on a pole, but you need to keep it like what is it, 6 feet off the ground and 10
10
feet
feet away.
horizontally away from something else so that they can't jump up onto it.
Yeah.
Baffles work very well. I'm gonna put in the chat window a link for you to the bird note again because it probably got lost in.
Where do you find longer poles? Go to any of your hardware store, nature store, I'd say.
Yeah, they should have stackable poles, like you can add extensions.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work at a store called Wild Birds Unlimited. I don't know if you have those near you, and they definitely have stackable poles, and they have a ton of baffles, and they usually have pretty knowledgeable people who can help you pick some stuff out.
And the other option is finding something online.
Yes.
Look at the reviews.
Yes, being a teacher, we understand budget can be challenging. So sometimes you can even find creative ways to make baffles.
Are there any other questions people have? Yeah, Karen, that's a great suggestion. Amazon, shop local, nurseries. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I really hope you consider joining us for any of our future webinars. I'm personally excited about quite a few of them. So yes, feel free to join us for any of our future webinars and help keep the conversation going. And again, share any fun squirrel photos or bird photos you have with us. It's always good to see those via social media. So if you try the Slinky experiment, send that to us to have students be published. I would love to see that as a publication in our student magazine. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, Kelly and I will hang around for a little longer. I'm going to mute myself. So Larry, what you can do, you'll be added on to our e-news, and that e-news will tell you when we have future events. But yes, you missed the link again. Let me find this free webinars link, and you can pre-register for all of our webinars. So let me just pull that up for you real quick. That way you can get that. Okay, there you go, Larry. That's a free webinar link, and that should help you register for any of our future webinars. Oh, yes, Leslie, the Q&A, how to use binoculars. We actually have quite a few resources around binoculars. Let's pull up that blog for you real quick.
Oh, there are a few more questions.
So, it's in both of them. I would recommend, I'm going to share two things with you. Okay, Leslie, here's one blog, Binoculars for Birding, which is just kind of a maintenance of logistics of binoculars. The other one I want to share with you is a great YouTube video on how to use binoculars that we've produced. How to get crystal clear focus. So let me just share this link with you as well. Well, thank you very much. Again, we will still hang around for any more questions you may have. For the time being, I think I'm going to mute myself, but we'll hang around probably until 7:20, assuming there are no more questions. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you again. Monica, hang on, give us a second. We'll send you the SurveyMonkey link. You're probably actually clicking the wrong link we sent earlier on in the survey. Thank you, Kelly. The JASI login, you don't need a login for this. So Kelly will send you the right link right now.